So it is noon on the East Coast. Welcome. This is the Antisyphon Anticast, and we've got a little bit of a fun one that we put together here. That every so often we go through and we retire challenges from our Cyber Range that is part of the Antisyphon training program. And on with us, even though he just went off camera, but I'm still going to call him out. We got Ryan, who is always in the background. There he is. There's Ryan, making us look good and sound good and yelling at us if we've got feedback and telling me to put he didn't tell me today. Somebody else told me to put my earbuds in. And we got Jason Crafton. He's off camera right now because he is also helping with John Strand's class. So if you're in John Strand's class and you're dual zooming, well, guess what? He is too, but he's in there managing the Discords and helping out with classes. We got Caleb, who some of you may have seen, some of you may not, but if you're going to conferences coming up soon, you may see Caleb running around. So say hi, because he's doing a lot of the AV and audio for our live conferences. We got Velda. Hi, Velda. Velda's here representing us with Antisyphon as the leader of this fine pack of Antisyphon folks. And
Wild West Hackin' Fest.
And Wild West Hackin' Fest. That's true. Absolutely. We're going to talk about that. And of course, Noah Heckman, who's going to take us through these things.
And I'm here representing Iowa Corn.
Iowa Corn, the Iowa Corn Board. Noah is actually, this is a fun fact, Noah actually is 578th on the list of people who receive corn subsidies in Iowa. He just gets it for just talking
about it.
Iowa corn. Yeah. And of course, I'm Ian Meyer. I'm going to be hosting this for you today. So Noah, what are we going to be talking about?
We're going to be talking about Cyber Range challenges and a little bit of like an intro into how one might get started with some Cyber Range stuff. We're going to be, sending some to the farm because once I show you how to do them, I can't leave them at the same point value. It just doesn't work. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, they were good challenges, and they were really good, and we're gonna love them forever. But it's time to go. It's time for you to go upstate.
Well, they live on a little bit. They just become worth less.
I like how we took it from loving animal to it's livestock. They're just not worth as much anymore.
Yeah. The market share has gone down, and it's not what it's worth. It's not worth what it used to be.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Noah's going to be going through 4 challenges today that are getting retired from our Cyber Range. So for those that don't know, Noah manages the Cyber Range for us, and it's part of not only our ACE-T certification, which is an Antisyphon certification that we continue to build out to help people build core skills around cybersecurity and take knowledge they've learned from our Antisyphon training courses and apply it in a real world environment where they can actually test these skills. And like was said, every so often we just have to retire them. They get old, a number of people have challenged them, and we need to put more challenges in. Noah, why don't we talk about the was it all about that base?
Yeah. Actually, first I wanted to cover real quick.
Oh, please, yeah, dude, don't need it.
One of the things I get a fair amount of questions about ourselves is just like, where do I start with Cyber Range? So I thought we would jump into a little bit of Cyber Range controls. We got a little time for it, so it'll all be good. All right, so if we see, I just got a Kali box here pulled up. It's an old Kali box at that. Some of you guys are going to call that out probably. But that's okay, because this is my Kali box, and everyone has their own Kali box, and it's special to us, and that's fine. Anyways, so when you log in,
full metal jacket there for a minute.
What's that?
You went full metal jacket there for a minute. This is my rifle. This is my anyway.
Anyhow, so yeah, when you get in, you get your access set up. If you get it from a class or whatever else, you get in, and then you're going to go to Antisyphon Cyber Range access. And some people get hung up. They get to this page, they're like, okay, I'm here, but now what do I do? Like, there's like one link. The top menu has changed. So in order to find your problems, you can go to problems over here. That then loads the problems, which of course, as soon as you do a live stream and try to load problems, it loads much slower. And you have these controls. You can actually turn these things off. By default, they're all turned on. But if you're like, no, I want to specifically focus on like web exploitation, then you can just turn everything off except for web exploitation. And now you can really focus on that. It'll organize it by point value, and you can dig through it. And so if you're working on like, hey, I want to learn WebEx, like you can do that. You want to learn reverse engineering, you can do that. That's all there. If you have a team set up, there's a scoreboard too. So here's the scoreboards of all the people. We got a lot of level 10s, level 9s, level 8s. So yeah, kudos to those people. And yeah, so anyhow, that's the main part. Some people get stuck on that, so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Also, the filter option is not necessarily something that's everyone figures out, so that's kind of nice too. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about all about that base. I just pulled all the questions aside earlier, so I don't have to dig through and scroll through them all. But you can pull them out in these little pop-out windows. So basically, the way you go about solving something like this is you pick a problem that you're working on, and you're going to get it. Now, this doesn't give you much info. It just gives you this. And this is your challenge. First, your challenge is to figure out what you do with this. Now, you do have some benefit in the fact that if you look over here, this matches the yellow for cryptography. So the problem color matches like what the type is. So you know it's a crypto problem. And interestingly enough, I retired this challenge like not even an hour ago, and 3 people have already solved it, which I think is fun. We have this line of stuff. And the funny thing I like is it's in the cryptography section, but it's actually not cryptography at all. It's encoding, and you'll hear it time and time again. Encoding and cryptography are not the same, but there's the thing of how do you figure that out? So I pulled up your favorite tool for anything cryptography and encoding related over in that window, which is CyberChef. You can just Google it. It's from GCHQ. Once it's Skynet initializes there, basically what you can do is just pop in here. And the best part about CyberChef is that it's actually pretty smart about some stuff. So you can go and like do it the hard way where you find a formula and you're like, oh, let's try it from base 64. Oh, look, that's it. We got our flag. It's right there. But that's beside the point. You can also just delete this formula. And you'll notice this little thing that popped up right there. It's like, hey, from base 64, I can find out using what the magic is, and it'll run through. Now, if you get a couple different layers, it doesn't always work out this way. But it's a pretty nice tool that way for basic stuff. And I was actually laughing. We were talking before the webcast started, before we even got into pre-show banter. And so, like, how is this useful? The reason we use encoding is because not everything is safe to just drop on the command line. Sometimes we want to like take and put it so it doesn't get interpreted directly. Or interpreted by one program or another, or it can't be traversed through something because like one like application you're using doesn't use spaces because spaces mean something else. So there's a bunch of different types of encoding, but sometimes you're going to do encoding for the purpose of just like making it so you can't serialize the data at the time, and it gets serialized when you want it. Or maybe you don't want to serialize it at all, and you don't want to run it getting in there. There's a number of reasons that you want to use an encoding format. And there's a bunch of different types, but one of the ones that stood out to me was I was doing a incident response type thing for a crypto miner that was in PowerShell, and the entire thing was encoded in Morse code. And like it was just this whole program was set up in Morse code, but it wasn't like dots and dashes even. But yeah, interestingly enough, like PowerShell has a default like decryption function for Morse code. And the main difference between encoding and encryption is encoding is reversible without knowing a password. Like you don't need to know any secret keys or any secret information in order to decode it. It's just a way of storing data in another form.
I want to jump in there while we're on that topic, because one of the things that comes up with these cyber range challenges when we're designing them, or any CTF really, you want to think about real world applications. Sometimes it's puzzles, but in things like this, in a learning environment, it's real world applications. And Noah, you said it fantastically, that like, hey, on a blue team side, sometimes we want to encode these things so that they do not accidentally get interpreted or what have you. On a red team side, or on a malware developer side, often they want to encode them so that the blue team misses them. So right. It doesn't interpret it, or it slows down the SLA on something like an IPS IDS to say, I don't know what this is, and I have an SLA to analyze every packet and let it through. So I'm going to let this through and just flag it as a warning. So these are all techniques that are used both by offensive and defensive, so that when you learn these kind of topics and items, you can see them in the real world and say, wait a minute, no, that's encoded. And the last point I want to make is, if once you get into security, and I'm not picking on developers, but I kind of am. I'm not picking on developers, but I cannot tell you the number of times in my corporate life where I would have to explain to a developer that just because we can't read it doesn't make it encrypted. You encoded it, and that's great, but that sensitive data can still be read. So this is a great example of what Noah's about to go through, of to how you can leverage that in the real world and show people this. So please continue.
Yeah, it's definitely not like the it's definitely not a secure methodology for securing secrets, and you see a lot of like developer keys and stuff like that sometimes. So yeah. Anyhow, so what you do after that, you're just going to go ahead and take your flag there. And in this case, I'm actually just going to take this portion of the flag. I'm going to copy that to our clipboard. We're going to go over here. We're going to drop it in there, and you can hit submit. And it's going to tell you, hey, that's correct. And I'm now 5 points closer to a next ACE level, which when you're at level 7, it takes a long time to get it if you're going to do 5 points at a time. But anyhow, and then of course, like if you like the problem, make sure you rate it. It helps us know like what more stuff we want to add to the range. So definitely add a little rating there. But yeah, so that's all about that.
CyberChef for a minute. Yeah, go back to CyberChef for a minute, because for those who don't know what this is, or you're like, CyberChef, what is that? We kind of went through it pretty quickly, but GCHQ, as was mentioned, if you're not from the UK or you're not familiar with kind of the global landscape of the Five Eyes intelligence agencies, GCHQ is essentially the UK's NSA. They are signals intelligence. And they put out this tool that their analysts use, and they said, hey, here you go. When we're going through and we very quickly need to decode something, whether it be a QR code, hex, whatever it is, they built this tool. They put it on GitHub. You can download it. You can fork it. They will personally warn you, don't use this for like generating production certificates. This is for analysis, but even though it will do that. Yep. The thing I wanted to call out, though, is that bake button. What NOAA did was just one piece. But what most attackers do is they will layer things. They'll encode it, and then they'll do this, and then they'll do this, and then they'll bit shift it. They'll do all this different stuff. You can actually stack these things on, and NOAA, if you wouldn't mind, like do.
I was gonna say the next challenge actually does that, Ian.
So. Oh, does it? Oh, perfect.
Oh yeah.
No, we planned this, and I was actually doing anyway, yeah. So yeah, let's look at the next challenge where we'll string some of those things together.
Yeah. So the next challenge is going to be it's called "What a Fine Problem," with 2 F's for some reason. And so a fine person once gave me 15 apples and 8 bananas. He then told me that the square root, but that's misspelled, of 100 was 10. And then there's this gibberish here. We're not sure what that is. Although interestingly enough, you can see some underscores, and just kind of a heads up, and you'll see this in the next challenge as well. Underscores are half the time indicative of a flag. Like it's just pretty common in like the CTF world when you see underscores. So you know you got some sort of flag here. And then if you look though where your underscores are spaced, you're like, this doesn't necessarily. It's not encoded. But it's not like a full encryption either, because not a lot of encryptions will use an underscore for one, like in their output, and two, it's just very specifically placed. For one, like having an underscore, single character underscore, you can almost assume that that's probably going to be some sort of like an A or an I or something like that, because this is going to be translated out to English at some form or another. So you can actually go through and do what's called like cryptographic analysis on this, like right here. Just follow those and use like linguistics models to kind of guess what some of these might be. Because there's only so many 2-letter words. There's only so many 1-letter words that you're going to find in linguistics, and then plus you have like a number of times that a word gets used in common language and a bunch of other stuff. We're not going to be doing linguistic analysis on this. That would take too much time. And also, I'm not a linguist, so.
But one of the things you are talking about there in cryptanalysis is frequency analysis, where you can. I want to inject an anecdote there for those of you who maybe are old enough or still watch Wheel of Fortune. A long time ago, they didn't have at the end of it where they have the thing and they say, all right, we're going to give you the letters R, S, T, L, N, E. And you get to choose like 3 letters or whatever it is now. Part of the reason for that is early on, people realized that in the English language, the frequency of the letters R, S, T, L, N, E in phrases showed up the most often. So every competitor would come up and say, give me R, S, T, L, N, E. And that would give them the most output. That's exactly what Noah's kind of really talking about here is in the English language, the frequency of vowels and things like that and 2-letter words would indicate that maybe this is, an A or something like that. So you get into a lot of those topics as you start getting into crypto challenges.
So yeah, if you have no idea what's going on, an interesting fact there, you have this little bot spot here, and then you can actually request a hint. And sometimes there's a penalty, sometimes there's not. But if you're lost on this, because this is just a sentence, it doesn't make sense. You hit the hint, and it can tell you, I promise there's no typos in this problem. Well, that seems strange because we found some typos already. So we're doing a cryptography problem. We have typos, but it says there's no typos. I don't know anything about cryptography. I'm coming from that viewpoint a little bit here. What can I start doing? So the thing that we're going to look at is this section here. So this find, and okay, so let's just look at this. Let's copy this because there's no typos, and we could trust the challenge hint on that. And then we're going to go Cypher. And we're going to see if like Google can help us out, because Google is your best tool for something like that. And interestingly enough, as soon as you start Googling this, it comes up with a Wikipedia article for a fine cipher. And you're like, oh, hold on a second. This sounds like some sort of witty cyber range name all of a sudden. There might have been more to it. So you can go through here and you can start reading through this all and learning what this cipher is. And how it works, and it's actually a pretty decent article. And interestingly enough, in the back end of these challenges, sometimes they have the solutions in there. This was not one of them. It took me a minute. I had to Google it. I actually used this Wikipedia page to figure out the problem so I could teach you guys how to do the problem, but that's beside the point. Yeah, this is decent, but it tells you about how it works and all that. Needless to say, there's the A and the B numbers that tells it how it shifts back and forth. So what we're going to do is going to jump over to CyberChef, and we're going to see, does it have a module for that? And if I type correctly, yeah, look right here, ffine cipher decode. So it's going to say, okay, well, we need an input, we need an A and a B offset. All right, well, let's jump back to our challenge. So we have our input. That's the wrong challenge. Let's go to this challenge. We're going to copy our input, drop that into CyberChef, and then we need to know what our offsets are here. Interestingly enough, it's called A and B. Almost all the documentation in that Wikipedia article and everything else references it as the A and B. And it's strange that there's 15 apples and 8 bananas. I'm just saying. Of course, there's the order of it all. But let's just try that out. So let's try 15 and 18 for our offsets. So we go 15 there, 18 there, or is it 8? I think I said it should be 8. All right. If I did this right. Yeah, 15 apples, 8 bananas. And what we get is more garbage. It doesn't really tell us anything still. Really, it hasn't fixed much, although you will notice the numbers that are in here have stayed the same. Because a lot of these, especially English-based ciphers, didn't account for numbers in their ciphering. So they only ciphered letters. So any numbers that were there would stay. Same for spaces. Like they didn't include special characters. So you'd have your underscores and your spaces, they would all stay in the same spot, which would let you do things like, linguistic frequency analysis. So we still got more to go on here that we're not quite sure about. But let's go back to our challenge here. And we have another typo. We're not sure what that is. So let's just jump into a new tab. Cipher. And it's talking about like ROT cipher rotation. Now, this is a much more common cipher technique, which basically just if you pull up the Wikipedia article on ROT 13, it just offsets all the letters by 13 places. So in this case, hello becomes Uriable, and yeah, it worked for the time being, but it was pretty easily cracked because it just moved the alphabet over by so many numbers. So if we go back to our CyberChef here and we go look up ROT, we have a ROT 13 decode right here. And we can rotate the numbers, and you can do a couple of things here. You can be really hardcore, and you can just start running through it. And you can actually, there is a rotate numbers option, which is kind of cool. And you can put that in. Is this the right one? Am I in the right thing here?
Which one are you looking at?
ROT 13 brute force. This is what I want. Here we go. I was in the wrong one. All right. So what it does, it goes through and it runs through all of the different combinations because you can only do it 25 times. Like after that, it just starts repeating, right? So you can actually start running through it, and you can actually brute force through your solution. And if you actually look, right here at 10, we see something that kind of looks like some general leet speak. That looks like possibly what we might be looking for. And then all the rest doesn't make much sense past that. So that's how you do a ROT 13 brute force. But if you want to just really clean it up, we go get our ROT 13 again. We drop in 10, which, if you remember, is from our challenge over here. The ROT of 100 is 10. So you could try 100 or you could try 10. But you're going to get 10 eventually, and you're going to find, oh, look, we have leet speak for hidden in a typo. And I wonder if that's our flag. So we jump over here, throw that in, hit submit. Oh, correct. Look at that.
Nice. So no, that's cool. So yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about with the power of CyberChef there. And this tool, although it's web-based, it is used by professionals everywhere. And is just a really great tool to go through and say, hey, I just need to do this real quick. I need it visually represented, but I also want to be able to go back and look at the code and make sure it makes sense. Well, you can go right to their GitHub and actually review the code that goes into it to make sure that that's, operating as designed, if you will.
Right.
For those of you who are hearing some of these terms around cryptography, like frequency analysis, things like that maybe, maybe they're new to you, or as you're doing crypto challenges, you're feeling a little, thrown off. One book that I highly recommend, I'm putting in the chat here, is, as a matter of fact, I think can I reach it from here? I might have a copy on the shelf. Yeah, I do. Second. There we go.
This was not planned, y'all.
This was not planned, obviously. So serious cryptography from No Starch Press, and you can find it on Humble Bundles a lot, which support charity and whatnot. So everything wins. If you have a decent understanding of math, you don't have to be like a mathematician or anything. This goes fairly deep without going too deep. But then there are also, on No Starch Press, there's a couple of books on cryptography reference, and if you're even need a little more than that to understand some of these crypto challenges, there is, I think it's, I keep going out of mic and Brian's going to yell at me. So I'll find the link and put it in there, but there are some crypto labs developed by a number of major universities. So we have our training, and then there's also some other pieces there, and I'll put those in the chat here as well. But tons of good stuff to learn about crypto, and not like Doge, even though it does apply. But
the one thing I thought was particularly good about this challenge is just that even I have taken some like cryptography classes. I didn't necessarily recognize the cryptography right off the bat with some of this. I mean, these aren't terribly complex ciphers. This is not a super like complex one, but it's not a common one you see in a CTF. And so it really kind of highlighted the importance of doing your research and learning the problem, solving it through. And so, yeah, some of you might have recognized it right off the bat. Some of you would not have, especially if you're just getting started in stuff like this. And it was a pretty low point problem. I think it was 250 points. But it was a pretty low point problem. But at the same point, for an intro person, like it's a good challenge, because it really encourages you to get out there and start learning about some stuff, and you start learning about how different ciphers worked. If you read through it enough, more than just solving the problem, you realize why they were using these ciphers at that period of time, and what that led to the point where we now have like blowfish cryptography and a bunch of other stuff later on. Like these are some of the early predecessors,
We were just seeing vulnerabilities come out, and I haven't even gotten a chance to read it yet. Oh, that's, yes, white cyber tacos. Keeps going over to his shelf. Why did he not prepare more for this?
We're gonna get Ian a wireless mic after this.
I have one, and I didn't put it on, and now I wished I had. But the code book, which is in the chat as well, this takes you through the history of cryptography. So there was a couple things in the chat about Mary, Queen of Scots crypto being bad, which is how she ended up getting killed, and all the way going back to ancient Egypt and Scythe-tail. Really, really good, and takes you all the way up to quantum cryptography in kind of a narrative format. So
yeah, my favorite is the one that was where they wrap it around the staff.
Yeah, Scythe-tail.
That one was. I can't remember the name of it, but I was like, yeah, that one was always. I remember reading that one. I'm like, that is insane. Anyhow, because you had like not. It was like one of the first times that you actually saw more of an encryption type because there was a key and the other. You know, I mean, like this is still had a key, but because you had to know how many times to rotate it. But like you had this actual key. This is a physical key. It was like your YubiKey, except like a really long time ago. Anyhow, carrying on. So the other one we got here, we got some OSINT recon type ones. So your coworker Leo refuses to tell anyone where he was going on vacation. You saw him post on Instagram, the super cute sloth, and you really want to know where it was taken. So we got to see if we can figure out where it's from. So there's actually a couple different things you can do here. But in general, when you get a picture type problem like this, one of the first places you're going to want to start is EXIF tool. And interestingly enough, there's a couple things you can do with CyberChef. It has an EXIF extractor, but this is not the CyberChef only show. And also, it has some encoding that you have to deal with for Unicode encoding. So I decided to not go that way. What's up, Ian?
We're going to lose our BBC funding.
I know.
Sponsored by the government of the UK.
No, it's sponsored by Iowa Corn. Still.
Oh, right. Yes. Of course.
Anyhow. So what you're going to do is just going to right click. You're going to hit, save image so that we can start looking into it. I've already downloaded it because this is like a Betty Crocker cooking show. So out of the one oven and into the other. So here's this picture here. We're going to pull up our terminal. And by default, this is not installed into certain instances of Kali. So if you're having issues with it, you might figure out how to first install EXIF tool, but that's okay. So we're going to CD into the desktop here. You're just going to call up the EXIF tool. I already ran it because I was making sure it was going to work first. But yeah, go ahead and fill that in, and it should just spit out all the EXIF data. Interestingly enough, though, for those who don't know, EXIF data is also something you can view by right-clicking in Windows and hitting properties and pulling up details in the Windows File Explorer. It'll spit all this stuff out for you as well. But it tells you, it's giving you a lot of different stuff here. It tells you it's a JPEG image. Okay, you probably could have told that from the .jpg file extension, but okay, we know that now. It'll tell you the resolution, the X and the Y resolution, what the byte is or what the byte order is for the EXIF data. Again, remember that thing I said about underscores. Interestingly enough, we're looking for a specific name, location, and we have underscores. So let's just give that a quick copy. Save that for a second. You can read through the rest of this here. EXIF data also can contain exact GPS coordinates. A lot of cameras that have the capabilities will put exact GPS coordinates of the picture location in, including up to and including your iPhone. And
on cue, that one I had ready.
There you go.
A photo that I took at a mall with my daughter because a Studio Ghibli festival is coming up there. And you can see there the EXIF data, what type of camera it was taken with, and actual GPS coordinates. And that's coming from that data.
Yeah. Yeah. And like my Nikon DSLR, which is actually not there because I'm using it somewhere else right now. It connects to my phone to use my phone's GPS coordinates and puts it in there. And it's really funky. But it's super nice. And, of course, you go to Apple, you can open up your pictures and go get the map section and it'll show you where all your pictures are. That's pretty fun, too. Like, it's great in a practicality. You think it's a really great idea unless you're trying to be really private. Like the guy at Burger King who was stomping on lettuce and got caught. That's linked there in Discord by White Cyber Tacos.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. It's also, if you're taking pictures of things that you really just don't want to be tracked with, like, you got to make sure you purge the EXIF data, or you're gonna not be happy. The up to and including, I had a case where some company uploaded pictures of their like C-suite to their website, and like Twitter will usually take your EXIF data off, or Facebook or whatever. It'll usually pull that EXIF data off before it uploads it. But this website was just like a standard WordPress, and they put it there, and the result was the like CEO had taken this picture at his house. And so someone found the EXIF data, and then they now knew where the CEO's house was. And yeah, it was mildly inconvenient, we'll say. But yeah, so there's a bunch of interesting stuff you can find in there. Lots of stories. It also gets used a lot if you do anything with like forensics toolkits. I know that like SleuthKit has built-in stuff for analyzing EXIF data and putting it on a map, or keeping track of certain cameras. Usually that's more going to come up in like police cases where you're doing that kind of forensics work. But it's useful to know that it's there. So
Yeah,
of course, the John McAfee story. You can't forget that. That's classic.
Noah just touched on that, but the intelligence, so the CTI industry, threat intel industry, anyone working in that field is often using EXIF data. There was a story I didn't find it, but it just popped into my head. There was a military strike on a set of terrorists. I think it was in Afghanistan, and that's how they did it. They used imagery, not only like the angle of the sun, the this, the that, metadata from it, all that, to basically find out where this location was and target it. So this stuff is used from everything all the way up to military grade to a really awesome CTF that I would highly recommend any of you get involved in. And as soon as I say it, it's escaping me, but I'll find it. It is a CTF where you can participate, and if someone knows it as I say it, please dump it in the chat. It's a CTF you can participate in to help find missing persons.
Oh, Tracelabs?
Tracelabs, thank you. Oh my god. Yeah, so
I wondered if that was where you were going with it.
Yeah, it was, and just brain no worky. Often when you go in there, you will get photos and whatnot. It's like, can you figure out where this photo was taken? And you get some crazy, like you can tell like these people were either just hyper focused on learning how this stuff works, or it's like you have some government training somewhere, because they're doing like angle of the sun, shadows this, da 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 da. Like
I watched a guy one time do a like series of tweets on finding a location based off of the stars in the picture. Like it was like a sunset, like it was like a horizon shot after dark, and they're like, okay, given what stars we can see, and so we can assume it was taken in around August. You're like right around here,
right? Absolutely nuts. Yeah, and as long as you've got a timestamp from a photo,
right,
you can start to do those kind of calculations.
Also gets stored in EXIF data.
True. Yeah, absolutely.
Unless you have one of those old cameras that like puts it on the picture down in the corner.
Yeah, and there's also some disinformation stuff where people know that this EXIF data exists, and you can change it. You don't just read it. You can put other data in there to make it seem like these photos were taken at certain times. And then you need like somebody who does deep forensic analysis to be like, no, that's not how that model of camera would write that data. It does this date format, da 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 da, and it you can go as deep as you want, all the way to rabbit hole.
Absolutely. So anyhow, we need to see if this actually works. We have a thing, and we never actually tested it. So let's drop this in there, and wham, right there. So that's how you solve that one. And these are, like I said, a lot of these challenges I picked out for this are somewhat common challenges that you might find in like a CTF. Kind of a primer of challenges that you might run into. You're gonna find a lot of like base conversion challenges. There's usually going to be at least one like ancient cipher challenge somewhere along the way. The other one that you see a lot of with pictures is steganography, and I refuse to do steganography challenges on principle because they are insane. But that's beside the point.
Thanks for watching. Don't miss part 2 of this series coming up next.